Alright, so I'm going to be showing you today how to make a casserole dish with a slab roller. This is going to be a 2 or 3 day process. You want to make sure you don't try to do this all in one day. You're going to need to roll 2 slabs on the first day. One slab you're going to cut into a circle and one you're going to cut into a long rectangle. So I already have my slabs rolled out. I'm going to compress the slabs just so that I get rid of all of the canvas marks. Right, here's my slab. I'm going to lay it down onto this bat that is round. And using a pin tool and the wheel spinning, I'm going to just go ahead and cut off the excess and cut a circle. Now that I have my circle, I'm going to measure my circle out to 9 inches. And the reason I'm doing that is because I already know with a 9-inch circle that I need 29 inches of slab. So go. Have my 9-inch circle. And I can take my 9-inch circle and set it aside. Now, I have a long board. And I'm going to compress my long slab that I've already rolled out. I'm going to measure 29 inches. Cutting out the length of the ruler, and I'm letting the end of the ruler be my 45-degree angle, or my 90-degree angle. For right now, I'm just cutting out the largest rectangle I can. I will be able to determine the height of my dish by cutting out a taller or a shorter rectangle. I'd like my rectangle to be 5 inches tall. So I'll make a mark at 5 inches on one side. I'll make a mark at 5 inches on the other side. And I will connect those 2 dots. a 9-inch circle. I'll wrap these up with plastic. I want to make sure that when I wrap these in plastic, that one side is touching the board and one side is not. And this is important because I want it to stiffen up just a little bit. Now, if you were doing this on a sunny day or on a hot day, you could leave it outside for a few minutes. Or, if you were here after school, you could roll these slabs out and wait 2 hours doing other work and come back and finish from there and leave them out in the classroom. But if you're doing this in class over a 2-day period of time, you're going to first roll the slabs, cover the slabs in plastic, and then put them outside or put them on a shelf. Now, if the shelves are full in the classroom, go outside and put them in the cabinets. The long cabinets have more space for slabs. If you are working with a friend, you could take the long slabs and you could put your slab and their slab in between boards, and you can stack all of your long slabs together. Now, if you do this, just make sure that you come back the next day to bend the slabs, and make sure that you're using at least three boards, so there's a board on each side of each slab. And then you'll wrap this entire thing in plastic, and that will be the first step of making a casserole dish. Okay, so this is day 2 of making a casserole dish, hand built. I have my slabs from yesterday. They are a circular slab right here, and in this bag I have my rectangular slab here. So as a review, this slab has been sitting on a piece of wood for about 24 hours in plastic, and this one has been in the same place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble these two pieces together, and I'm going to do that with some slip and a scoring tool. I have this slab here, the rectangle, pre-measured to 29 inches, which is about right for this circle, which is a circle which is 9 inches. And I just asked my phone what the circumference of a circle is with an 8-inch or a 9-inch diameter, and it's 28 inches in a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just lift this up real quick to put it closer to the center. And I'll be leaving it on this round bat for today. I'm going to lightly score the edge of the circle. And this clay is still pretty soft. It was sitting on a plastic bat, so it didn't take as much water from the clay. The piece of clay sitting on the piece of wood is a little bit drier, which is perfect. So take a little bit of slip, and I'm going to actually put the slip on the rectangular piece. I'm going to compress it really quickly. By compressing it the day after I roll it out, it's going to wake up the surface of the clay and make it less likely to crack. So now that I've taken it out of my bag, I'm just going to compress the clay with my metal lid. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And again, this just makes the clay less likely to tear or crack when I'm stretching. I'm going to scratch the bottom corner. brush a little bit of slip on that corner or edge. After I brush the slip on, I scratched a little bit more through the slip, and that just makes sure that it gets down into the creases. There we go. And now I'm going to wrap my slab around my circle out. And I'm going to slowly push my slab together. And because the slab is a little stiffer now, it will stand up on its own, just a little bit better. So I'm pushing this edge down. And then I take this edge and I push it all the way around. And now I'm left with a little bit of overhang. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my right angle tool. Usually I would use this while it's sitting down on the table, but I'm going to use it while it's sitting straight up. It doesn't need to be exact. I just want to make sure that I have a bevel on both sides. So there's one bevel there. I'm going to place that one down. And then I'm going to cut my other bevel here, which is this way. I'll scratch in between this seam slip. A little more scratching. And I'll slowly push these together. A little long. Cut off a little bit more. Now when I work the seam together, I want to push one side of the seam to my left and one side to the right. Because I want to kind of blend this so there's not a thick spot there. Okay. Good. I'll use my metal rib now to compress my seam on the outside. On the inside. And now I'm just working along the bottom seam to make sure it's nice and secure. There we go. Now, I can clean up this seam a little bit later, or now by just slowly scraping some of the clay and removing the excess. I can smooth the clay out to the side, or I can just leave the seam there. Now I have my base part of my casserole dish ready. Making sure it's nice and round. The next step is going to be something you could do on the third day, or you could do on the second day, and that is to add a gallery on the inside for the lid. So in a minute, I will roll a slab for the gallery and a coil for the gallery and a slab for the lid. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what would be something you could do on day 2 if you had enough time, or you could wrap up your project when you have the base attached to the sides and save it for day 3. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach one of these coils that I pulled from the extruder. It's the narrowest, thinnest coil that we have for our extruder. And I'm going to make that into a gallery. And I have a second one that I'm going to put as a seam to join the 2 pieces together. So I have the wall of my casserole dish, and then I have the floor of my casserole dish. And I'm going to put a coil right in the center just to make sure that there is a nice smooth transition and no cracking occurs on the inside of the dish. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spin the banding wheel, and I'm going to draw a line about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch lower than the rim. And I just want to draw a line so I know where to attach my gallery. So let's see, that looks about right. So now what I'm going to do is scratch along that line. All right, and I'm going to put a little bit of slip on there. Okay, and then I'm going to take my coil and I'm going to slowly just press the coil onto those scratch marks. Now I could scratch the coil, but because it's so narrow, I don't think it's quite necessary. Right now I'm just wanting it to stick, and then I'll compress it in. So I'm wrapping my coil all the way around. Then I'm going to pinch off a little extra. Alright, and now I'm just going to make sure that it's all about the same level before I press it down too much. I will cut off the excess on the inside. Okay. And then now I'm just going to go around and gently press in and down or into the wall of my pot, the coil, to make sure that it's well attached, and then I'll use a wet sponge to fully blend the coil in. Okay, so now that my coil is attached, I'm going to take a wet sponge going to spin the wheel and then just slowly press the coil into the wall as I spin the wheel from the bottom. Now I'm doing this just because it's going to smooth out the surface of the coil, but it's also going to slowly blend them together. So what I'm doing is the coil is right here, and I'm taking my sponge and I'm putting a finger below the coil and a finger above the coil, and the sponge wraps the coil, pressing it in. My fingers press down in gently, and that kind of compresses the coil so that it'll look nice and smooth on the pot. I could also go around with a smaller tool, and I could blend the top and the bottom. But now I have a gallery that sits a little bit lower than my project where a lid could sit. So now with my gallery attached, which I can show you here, there's the gallery, it's attached on the inside. With my gallery attached, I'm going to then take this smaller coil. I've already scratched the inside. I'm going to put a little bit of slip on this bottom corner, just a little bit. Scratch it again. And I'm going to put a healing coil on this inside part here, just to make sure that it stays connected. this coil attached, I'll use my sponge again. And I'm going to smooth that coil down. A little too much water. I'm going to go around and blend that coil in using my finger through the sponge, just pushing down on the corner, getting a nice tight seal. Now I'm going to push on my side here to make sure that I didn't warp the project. Good. So now the next step is going to be to take a slab. I've already rolled this slab out. I've made sure it's a little bit larger than my container, and I'm going to very gently just lay it down on the top of the rim, and it should sag in just a little bit. Now, when I have this up here, if I have too much clay on the outside, it might bend down and start to tear at the clay. Now, very lightly, I'm going to lift up from the corners and just push down a little bit as I lift up. And this is going to make my lid be a little rounder. It's going to help the clay kind of sink in. Go. Now, I'm going to, underneath, I'll go on top of my project, I'm going to cut off some of this excess. I'm not going to cut off all the excess, just some of it, just so that weight isn't sitting on the rim as much. Go. Okay. So now, with my metal rib, I am going to spin the wheel and just very, very lightly push down as I spin it, just make sure that I can get the top nice and flat. This is going to make sure I have a nice even dome, and it's almost like making a bowl. Right now there is air trapped on the inside, so it probably won't sink too much more, but I am just compressing it to make sure that it's nice and smooth and there's no wobbles or bumps. Okay. Now, from this point, if I wanted to, I can cut off this extra rim here, but I'm going to leave it on there. And the reason I'm going to leave it there is that it just is going to be an area I cut off later, and it will be less likely to fall in on itself if it has this little bit of a rim. So I'll leave the rim unfinished like this. It's pushed down. I have my lid measured, and then the last step is going to be to take this lid off tomorrow, and this could be day 3 or day 4, and shave it down so it fits in and put a little knob on it. All right, so now I am back. Just to review, we're making a casserole dish, and I rolled the slab in the base on day 1. On day 2, I would have assembled those, possibly put a gallery coil on the inside, and lay a slab on top. And either day 3 or day 4, this is now set up a little bit. It's a little stiffer. I'll be able to take it off with it keeping its shape, and I'll be able to trim this. So I'm going to take my lid and I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to set it down, and I'm going to take my jar and set it down as well. Now I have my banding wheel here. I'm going to take my lid, put it on my banding wheel, and I have a small line that's all around the outside, the crease at the top of my canister made, or my pot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off that excess. So I'm going to use a pin tool, and I'm going to trim off the excess. First I'm going to try to center that excess so I can draw a nice straight line. It's pretty close. I want to make sure I don't cut off too much so that the lid will fit right in. So I'm cutting off a little more than I need to, or a little less than I should probably, to make sure it will not fit in my first cut. So I'm cutting a little wide to cut all the way through. Take this clay off. Okay. Now that I have my lid cut, I'm going to just smooth out its edge. Mine's still a little soft, so I'm not going to use any water. I don't want it to get any softer. I'm just smoothing it out with my fingers. Okay. Pick my lid up. then I'll bring my canister back, and ideally my lid should now fit inside my canister, but I can see that it's still a little too large. So now, very slowly and carefully, I can still see where my line was. I can either try to lightly bend this corner in to make my lid fit, or I can use one of my Sureform tools and go along the outside and just sand off that last little bit of clay that's preventing my lid from fitting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand off a little bit of this clay that I know I can see a line around the outside. You probably can't see in the video, but there's a line here showing where it's too wide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly just remove that clay and then try again. Now if you make a very symmetrical container, whether it be an oval or any other shape, your lid might fit more than one way, but usually with these hand-built lids, there's going to only really fit well one direction. So we do make a little identifying mark. Once we get the lid to fit, we'll put a mark on the lid and a mark on the rim, so when you line those up, the lid fits best. But in a perfect world, if you made a really nice cylinder, like on the wheel perhaps, and you made a nice cylindrical lid, it would be able to fit every way. Okay, so now that I have my lid cut out, and I think I have it smoothed down. There's a little bit more on this side I can see, which is good. I'm going to flip it over and clean up this outside edge a little bit. It's good. Okay. Now I'm going to try my lid again. It's much closer now. Now at this point I can shave it down some more, or I can make sure this is still nice and round. I don't want to warp it. I could lightly take my lid, and if it can take it, I can bend it a little bit. Mine can't. So I'm going to bend my rim down just a little bit. If your slab is too stiff, if your lid is too stiff, then you might not be able to bend it a little bit because it might tear or crack. But the outside edges of mine are still a little bit wet, so I can bend it just a little bit. Hopefully that's going to make it fit a little bit better. And once I get it to sit in there, let's see. There we go. Perfect. My lid is sitting on my gallery. Just making sure that the lid is all the way down on the gallery so that all sides are closed. Looks good. Great. So now that I have my lid on my container, I could put a handle on it. Now, the handle is up to me what shape I want to make. If I wanted to build like a small sculpture on the top, it could look like anything you want. I'd recommend that it's something you can grab to pick up when it's hot, because if this was hot out of the oven, you probably don't want it to be too tall because it'll take up oven space. And you probably want something you can grab with a glove on, right? So one of the easiest things to do is to make a loop, or a kind of loop. Something, this clay's a little short, this clay is softer. Make some kind of loop that would sit on top, that would work. If I wanted to, I could take a small piece of clay, make a a knob. So it could be a little object like this. I could make a small knob that sits on top. It could sit there. It could look like that if you want. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. However you want to make the knob, and you would attach that onto here. If this is still a little soft, you don't want to probably push down on it with the knob. You might want to take it out of your container, take the lid off, and push the knob on. But however you do it, if you scratch and you attach, we'll just say that I want this one on. I'll probably take it off because mine's a little soft to attach. I would scratch, put this on, and blend it in place. And that would be my casserole dish. The last thing left to do would be to add handles if you wanted handles on the side. Usually side handles could be something like this. It would go along the sides. This is a type of handle you could use if I was going to make a casserole dish so that you can lift it up from underneath here with the top off with this. Or the handles, if you wanted on the sides, could be decorative. You could have them just be small little objects on the side. You could decorate the whole outside with small objects. But usually if you're going to pick something at the top of the oven, it's good to have handles that you can get your fingers underneath. So I'll leave that up to you. This video's purpose is to show you how to make the form itself. So really quickly, you want to first roll out 2 slabs. Then you want to let them dry for a day, and then you're going to assemble those slabs to make the wall and the base of your project. There needs to be a gallery for the lid to sit on top of so it doesn't fall straight through. And then you also just need to shape the lid. This lid isn't very domed, it's pretty much flat on top. The further you push your slab down with your metal rib, the taller the lid will be. But that's the generic shape. In class, I'll show you how to make oval and rectangle and non-symmetrical objects or containers.